The shuttle that will bring you both to the brewery tour and the cruise will meet at 2 at the lobby. So make sure you're down there. It's gonna leave on the dot. So make sure you're there by 2 for the cruise and the brewery shuttles. Also, for those of you going on the cruise, it is BYOB, and they do have coolers on board. So if you want to get juiced on the cruise. Feel free. Also, John, those of you who are golfing, John will be contacting you about the pairings later this afternoon. And again, we're live streaming all of this over MediaPost.com, so ping your folks back at the office if you want them to tune in. We'll also be archiving the video, so if you want to go back and look at it later and review it, we'll be posting that. And of course, the deck with all of your survey responses from this morning will be posting soon. I want to thank Luke Edson, who's the U.S. CRO of Future, for stepping in for us. Originally Mike from Outside Mag had been planning on coming and talking about the ways in which they're leveraging podcasting, and I was really eager to see that because I love what they're doing with their podcast. Mike tore his Achilles tendon over the last weekend and can't make it, so we're going to try him for the next show. But Luke and Future have a great case study that I talked to them about, and Luke was willing to come in and tell us about what they've been doing with their PC Gamer show at E3. This one checks off a lot of boxes that I thought would be of great interest to you. First of all, it talks a great deal about the gaming channel and about the various and the range of distribution channels available for video, but also one of the things that Luke and his team have been doing is using this to better understand the ways in which video can ramp up as a profitable business model, the ways in which you can contain costs, the ways in which you can coordinate distribution, but also the ways in which production values and revenues can ramp up. So please welcome Luke Edson from Future PLC.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I guess it's fun to be a second choice, but thank you. I do want to thank MediaPost for bringing this group together, because when I listen to the talks we've had this morning and I think about the challenges and the way that many of you in the room are solving them, I really think these are my people. And I'm super pleased to be here and learn from all of you. I also see a Steal Your Face sticker on this computer over here, so someone's really my person. So I'm pleased to be here. When Steve was... There goes my mic. I guess it's back up. He called publishers, and I think he called me personally a polyglot. And I was like, damn, that's kind of a hard word. I don't know what that means. And I felt like maybe those were fighting words. And then he called Jim Spanfeller that, and I thought, okay, well, I'm in good company anyways. All right, here we go. So when I think about today's theme, engagement, and how we make money doing it, and how important should video be in a strategy, and how do we all survive in a duopoly plus Amazon world? We all face those challenges, and I'm going to share a narrative today about one way that we do it where we've been really successful. And I'd love questions on it, and I'd love to learn about how you do that too. And so it's about a show that we run called the PC Gaming Show, and I'll get into that in a minute, but I just would like to introduce you to Future just for a moment. So Future is a global publishing company. We are traded on the London Stock Exchange. We run 155 different brands that are magazines, websites, events. This is our consumer portfolio, so just in the US, so it's a small smattering. We're very strong in technology, gaming, music, B2B. And one thing that we think of is we love all our brands because they serve an audience in a really important way, and that could be information, passion, utility, commerce. And we have a pretty aggressive strategy on how we monetize that audience. And it's not just ad-supported, it's ads, it's subscriptions, it's video, it's e-commerce. And we're always diversifying that monetization model because that's what really helps us thrive in a really consolidated landscape. The final thing about us is that we believe in profitability across the board. So we love growth, but 155 brands, every single one of which is profitable. And if they're not, then we look really hard at that. And in the magazine business, you have to look hard at that all the time. So that's a bit about Future. Let me tell you a little bit about this case study. So we run a show, and we've done it for 5 years, called the PC Gaming Show. And it runs concurrent to E3, so in June in Los Angeles. And this is just an overview of this year's event. So we ran it at a theater called the Mind Theater this year. It was our 5th turn on it. It was June 10th. And the big stat there is this year, we got about 19 billion press impressions on this. So it's a differentiated show for us. And I'll talk about some of the other key stats in a moment. But the format is essentially a press show. So it's a live event. But we've turned it into a really big streaming video franchise that we monetize in a big way. So I'm not going to give you the full dollar value of the show because we're live streaming, but I can talk to you about that maybe when we golf or go on a brewery tour or do all of the above. So what I'd like to do now is just give you a flavor for the show. So I've got a little sizzle reel too. I'm not sure the music is as cool as Jim's, but let's take a look at that.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the PC Gaming Show!
This is the PC Gaming Show.
That was a pretty good voice of God there, too, for us. So you get the sense of this thing. So it is a press show. It's live. It happens on a day at a time. But it's really a big video franchise for us. So a big streaming video franchise. So here's some of the key stats, which is the one that I'm the most responsible for is do we grow revenue on the thing? And this year we had great growth on it, 40%. It is a 7-figure day for us, so quite a substantial piece of our business. And if we think about viewership and engagement, I wanted to provide some of the key stats because that's the theme of the day. And so this is video, it's live, and what we see is 5.9 million people, welcome to the PC Gaming Show. It's big distribution, and 3.2 million of those were during the live stream. So that's a good-sized TV show, period, on any given day. We then had a lot of video on demand. And one stat that we're really, really proud of is how many people at any given moment, like the peak moment. So this year the peak was 722,000 concurrents. And so this is an engagement metric when you think about video that becomes really important. And this is a metric that's talked a lot about on the big streaming platform. So Twitch is our streaming partner for this. And that's where this comes from. So we're always thinking about how many concurrent viewers, because that's going to drive a lot of the engagement and then monetization we take from a show like this. So it's an impressive show. We've got a lot of different partners from Twitch to Facebook Live to YouTube to Twitter. We actually partnered with one of our competitors, IGN. They ran the stream on their site too. So there's this whole network of distribution that really helps us build something that's fully differentiated. So you think about 19 billion press impressions, and here's what they say. They say it's a damn good show. Vice said it's the best show at E3, and we didn't get there overnight. It wasn't always the best show. So the history on this show is 6 years ago, the gentlemen who run PCGamer.com and the PC Gamer magazine had this dream. They're like, wow, every year at E3, all the big companies, Nintendo, Ubisoft, EA, run these huge press events, and they're all talking about consoles, and we really believe in people playing games on PCs. And what if we ran a show? What would we talk about? What would we do? And so they wrote an article the first year, just words and pictures. And the next year they said, let's not just do an article, let's try to run a show. And it was like a shoestring show. We didn't spend a lot of money on it. We didn't have a lot of viewers. We did generate some sponsorship. So this sort of traditional model of asking people to be the title sponsor of the PC Gaming Show. And I think that first year, AMD, the chip maker, stood up. So we're right here in their home in Austin, and we were pleased with that. Intel has been a presenting sponsor. So right in that sweet spot for PC gaming. But it was still a growth project, and we're now in year 5. We just completed in June. You saw the stats, it's now a really big franchise for us. And this is what I think the value of the case is to share with all of you, which is how do we do it? So we think about it as its own franchise and its own potential to be a big part of our revenue portfolio, our engagement portfolio, a fully differentiated brand that we run. So there's PC Gamer, and then there's this brand, The PC Gaming Show. And then we promote it as such. So we have a really hardcore look at the way that we promote it from starting as soon as April, really working social, working our own network, working press, and then getting right up to the show and just blowing it up that day. And that really helps us get excitement for viewership, and that leads to the big numbers that you saw. We have, as I mentioned, a big network, and there was a question when we looked at Geo, how do people cross between the two? And so one thing that we do really well is we've got a big portfolio of tech sites, gaming sites, and those two things run together. So for sure, we self-promote across our network, and it's a big network. It's 100 million people per month, and so that gives us a big install base to say this is really exciting and it's relevant to you. And so I think that's a big component about thinking about those crossovers within your portfolio that can help you build a bigger network effect for something that you're trying to grow or something that you're trying to keep as a differentiated asset. We look at social, obviously. We do paid social for it. We do a lot of organic social. We look at how people share it and how that helps us on the day as well as build traffic toward it. And so that leads me to a couple of takeaways for all of you on how to think about building a video franchise, driving engagement, but making money along the way. And so the first one's the most obvious, which is if you see the potential to build a franchise or if you've got great ideas within your company, go for it, because it's a good long-term play. We know that, we're going to talk about OTT today and all these opportunities. This is very real. We know that young people are consuming video more than ever, but just doing it on lots of different platforms. So there's an opportunity, whether you've been a print publisher, which traditionally we were a magazine publisher, to think about building video. And that's a long-term play. It will serve you well. The second thought there is, so how do you build it up big? So this path to significant distribution is one where you automatically think YouTube. Well, that's the biggest video platform, billions of users. That's really important. But then Twitch is another platform. Lots of people think about it in the game world, but it's becoming much more than that. It's really a major live streaming platform. Of course, it's owned by Amazon, so we get into that duopoly plus Amazon world. And then it requires lots of network effects, so whether that's social or running it through your own network. And you've got to consider all of those factors, Facebook Live being another one, to really get the word out and then get the viewership up. So for us, this is a really important one. I told you that my company really believes in profitability across the board. It's our key metric in terms of how we define success. The market loves profitability too. And so on this one, as I mentioned, the first year we didn't run a big high production value show. So that cool sizzle reel I showed you, that's not what year one would have looked like. It would have looked very different. And the advice I'd give all of you as you're building up these franchises, one, take the shot, build them up. They don't all work. But as they are working and as you are growing and building your playbook and muscle around how you make these successful, what we've done is just ramp production value as we're ramping engagement and revenue. So don't start with a high cost base and get the false negative, which is this show didn't make money. We won't do it again next year. It's not profitable. What we've done is as we're making more money, as we're driving more engagement, we're ramping that production value. And so this year, we work with one of the best production houses in LA to do this. If you see the theater, it's equipped with every amazing camera that you can imagine. And we're going to do more with it next year. So this still looks like a live show. You saw that. We're going to even do more. Think about NBC's amazing coverage of the Olympics over the years where they're talking about athletes and then they're doing the little side segments. We're going to start to do more of that. We'll even make it look more and more professional. And as we do that, our partners become more interested in this being not only an opportunity to showcase their game, showcase their technology, but really a premium asset, much like they would have thought of network primetime television in the past. And the cost we get on it, or the investment we get, is really terrific, and we make a good profit on it. So that's the last point, which is, so how do you monetize something like this? And certainly there's the traditional model of, well, we think of video, we stick an ad in front, or we stick an ad in the middle. There's no ads. This is not a show where there's pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll. It's a live show. And for many years, we did the old sponsorship model. Presenting sponsor, gold sponsor, platinum sponsor, packages. And that kind of stalled us out a little bit, because as it was growing in viewership and we were ramping that production value, we were having to say to people, it's $1 million presenting sponsorship opportunity. And they're like, yeah, I don't know, we're not going to do $1 million one-day thing. And that stalled us a bit. And then what we realized is, as we built that distribution up, and this has become a major show for us, there is a model. It's not the traditional TV model of selling, but it's this cost per minute to be in the show. So what we say to people is, you want to have a segment in the show fully integrated. It's part of the show. It's going to look native, but you're going to talk about your brand. You're going to show a video up there. So you saw that we're premiering games. They get to show their world exclusive premiere trailer. And they then might want to have a developer come up. And it's just, how many minutes on the stage do you want? And we're selling it at a cost per minute basis. And advertisers understand this, because we're giving them the engagement metrics. So this is the translation of engagement into revenue in a video world. And it's not just pre-roll. And so it's really something to think about, because it's very doable. And I was thinking about some of the Rolling Stone comments. This is the kind of stuff that advertisers are starting to understand. They want native experiences. We do have to monetize it with a metric. And this one has unlocked a lot of value for us, because what ends up happening is it's quite a scarce resource or inventory. And so we say there's only so many minutes in a 90-minute show, and they're not all sold. It's about half editorial, half paid. A lot of it looks the same. And so we just do a pretty, and here's my favorite part. I'll show my true colors. We do a pretty hardcore pitch on it, which is we start out pitching everybody, and then we just start locking down the minutes. And everybody wants minutes in the first third. And guess what? Minutes in the first third cost more than in the middle third and more than in the final third. And so as we're closing them down, it's just like you really are getting to put that urgency to close. And then every year we just charge more for the minutes. And so it's an exciting case to consider for all of you. Now, we don't think we have it perfect. I'd love to hear about how you approach some of these challenges and what you think about our approach. But again, Steve, super pleased to be here and share this case, because I do think it hits on a lot of your points. And I look forward to meeting you all throughout the day.
Luke, thank you very much. We have time for questions. I got a laundry list of questions myself, but I want to hear yours first.
Half advertising?
Yeah. So that wasn't a question. That's just either a judgmental comment, or you're impressed, one or the other. But thank you. I appreciate that. Make me feel very warm and welcome. My people.
Do you get any pushback from viewers, and what are the disclosures to the viewers about how it's being monetized?
We don't get pushback, because the beautiful thing about content in, I think, today's world from brand advertisers is they're challenged to do more than just create 30-second ads or banner ads. They're challenged to have content that really engages people. They're faced with the same challenges that we all are. And so I think that's quite symbiotic. I think that they cannot build distribution like that. They don't have the authority to do it. And they want to bring something really special to the table. And so there's no pushback from viewers, because it's now a platform. If you want to debut a PC game and you want people to know about it at E3, you can go buy a booth, and you probably will, from the ESA, and you'll have your demo station there. But this is 5.9 million people. And so I think it's quite a good balance.
I want to ask you about some of the partnerships. First of all, tell us about Twitch as a platform, a distribution platform. Twitch is a monster that I think has sort of gone under the radar of a lot of people, both on the advertiser side, but even on the media side. Tell us a little bit more about Twitch as a distribution platform and the kind of partnership that you had with them.
Yeah, sure. It's an amazing platform, and so it certainly has this synonymous with gaming, because that's where its roots are, and that's where there's still a lot of interest. But as we think about the world that we live in, and video is a huge part of it, and young people are a huge part of it, and innovation is a huge part of it, Twitch is a platform where young people watch video, comment on video live and in real time, share it, interact with it, and gaming is becoming, we'll use the advent of Fortnite, but it's not the only one. It's becoming one of the primary drivers of entertainment, and it runs so close with technology. And so Twitch is an amazing platform to reach young people who are consuming streaming content, but your content has to really speak to them. It can't just be you're pushing something through there, or it doesn't get big viewership.
What's the nature of the partnership, though? Are you paying to be there? Are you rev sharing with them? How does that work?
Yeah, there is a value exchange there for sure, which is us paying them. It is not structured as a rev share. We're running it through a channel, which is the PC Gamer channel on Twitch. So they're making money, we're making money, and it's a fair balance. I think they've got a good balance on how they do that. I'm happy to talk offline more on what the structure of the relationship is.
Another relationship I wanted to touch on is your partnership with IGN, a direct competitor.
Yeah.
Tell us how that worked in terms of both parties' willingness to do this. What sort of caveats and what sort of reservations and what sort of limitations were involved there? What did you learn from having a partnership with a direct competitor?
Yeah, this is why I think we're all here. So I haven't noticed anyone from Google or Facebook here. I don't think there's anyone from Amazon here. If you are, come say hi to me. Love all those companies. And we're faced with a level of competition that's not me versus Digital Trends, although they're a friendly competitor of mine as well, and they were here in the room today. But it's all of us competing to get a hold of that 20% that's not spent in the consolidated world. And I think that there are opportunities in publishing, and whatever your specialty is, if it's local news, if it's games, if it's tech, it's really providing a special value to a user that the big players can't. And so the way we see it is there is some co-opetition there, and IGN sees a fully differentiated asset. They don't have that show. They know that their viewers want to consume this content. They know that it will increase their traffic, that it increases their engagement. And so I think there is a good co-opetition network effect there, Steve, where pretty simple partnership. They just streamed it live on their site as well. And we were super pleased with that. There was no value exchange on that other than they're able to grow their user base, and I'm sure they monetize that however they chose to. But we're just pleased to have a world where certainly we compete against IGN, but we also believe that if we all do well in this pretty tough environment to compete, and we all innovate around how publishers drive engagement, use video, make money, drive profit, then it's a stronger world. Like, we don't just get shut down, we do better. And I think that's why we're all here, to learn from each other.
And then my last question is about building a video franchise.
Sure.
Now, remind me again, is this an annual one-shot, or is there an ongoing PC Gamer show franchise that's evolving and staying in touch with users throughout the year? And I'm also curious how this relates to the broader video program at Future.
Sure. So this, as it stands right now, is a one-shot. It's a one-day show. The brand of the show is The PC Gaming Show. It is sitting underneath a master brand called PC Gamer, which is both a magazine and then a website, PCGamer.com. And the magazine is recognized as the world's authority, this is our claim, on PC gaming. And so, we make that claim based on traffic in the specific subcategory of PC gaming versus the total game roll-up. And so, yes, there's an ongoing relationship with the master brand, which is we've got a lot of repeat visitors at the site. We still have a strong subscription base on the magazine. And we're an important part about how users that have passion, have the need to buy products in PC gaming, consume content. And so they wait for this show. And so we build it up throughout the year. And we are thinking about how we could extend it. And so when I talk about ramping production value or ramping investment in a franchise, it's only when we're confident that we can do it in a way where we can make money. And we're gaining that confidence now all the time. And I think that's one of the key takeaways, which is if you've got a hit, then you start to think about how you layer different monetization elements onto it. And so I'll give you one example of how we're looking to extend it, which is we believe a lot in content to commerce, right? And that was all of your comments, like this is becoming an important thing, like content actually drives commerce. And we're really kind of thinking about it, could this one day moment help us kick off, and I don't want to call it Amazon Prime Day, that would be a little bit arrogant, but kick off an opportunity for computers and peripherals to be able to give special deals around PC gaming that then extend the video franchise into a significant shopping moment. So that's a way that we would think about extending it, if that's helpful.
Well, but I was really curious because this is highly unusual to talk about a franchise in terms of an annual. I mean, most franchise building is around regularity and frequency, but in this case, it's an annual show that's only been done 5 times, and it's a franchise.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you another example. We're about to run in November another similar show, live show. It's called the Golden Joystick Awards. We give out sort of best awards for global games. It's run in London, but it's an international distribution. There's voting beforehand. It's a streaming video show. We run it one time a year. And again, big numbers in terms of revenue, growth, viewership, and engagement. So I think we found a model here where we believe it's a franchise because we can repeat it and grow it, and it continues to increase in engagement, viewership, and then money. And then we make sure it's profitable along the way.
Luke Edson, this is really cool. Thank you so much for
Thanks,
bringing
Steve.
it to us.
Thanks, everyone.
One of the things that I often like to do in our program is sort of interrogate the buzzword. We've had at this own event CDOs from multiple publishers, Hearst, Condé Nast, all talk about putting data at the center of their enterprise, at the center of publishing, what their plans were for doing so. And I continue to be curious about what that really means on the ground to publishers, how publishers really are starting to incorporate data and make it inform all aspects of their operations, from ad sales to editorial to product development, what that really means, but also what the choke points are in that process. I think some of the comments that we saw at the opening of the show talked about the ways in which it's much easier said than done to bring data to the center of a traditional editorial operation and ad sales operation and really make it work. That's what I wanted to test out in this panel. And we have taking the lead an old friend of MediaPost, Scotty Reese. Scotty is the founder of The Girl's Guide to Cars and co-founder of She Buys Cars. She has been integral to our automotive marketing show for a number of years, but goes way back with MediaPost for many years, including Ken Fadner's original publication, Adweek. Please welcome Scotty Reese in our panel.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Want to make sure that we're sitting according to the schematic so you can tell who we all are. So I think we are. So I'm Scotty Reese. I am the founder of A Girl's Guide to Cars, actually headquartered here in Austin. Just moved here from New York about a year ago, but I like to think that my office is a laptop in an airport, so you probably all know that. You know that feeling, right? So thank you, Steve, for inviting me to sit with this group and talk about data-driven publishing. They're all really great at data. They all have a esteemed history, career built in data. For an entrepreneur like me, it's what keeps me up at night. So, and you may have some of those questions too. We started talking about data-driven publishing, and a lot of great questions, and I think a lot of mystery as to where we're going in the world can be found in the data. So, I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. And we should have some time at the end for questions too. So, Nicholas, why don't you start us off?
Thank you, Scotty. Nice to be here. I am Nicholas Butterworth. I'm the Chief Technology and Product Officer at Refinery 29. And I also oversee some other departments that touch on data that aren't immediately obvious from that title, including the data and analytics team, the research and insights team, affiliate commerce, and also ad ops, and IT. So I'm kind of like in the middle of all the data stuff. And as I say, if anything goes wrong, it's definitely my fault.
Hey guys, my name is Chris Park. I am Director of Revenue Operations. What I do at Cheddar is everything revenue focused outside of the branded partnerships. So maybe ad ops, reporting, programmatic yield, etc. Pretty much all those different practices within the company. Also recently got the privilege of starting to work with News12.com as well. So I manage programmatic and yield for that portion of our business following the acquisition. What does Cheddar do? A lot of you guys probably know Cheddar from LinkedIn and the gadget videos that we do, but that's actually not the premise of the business. The focus of that is to grow audience and kind of brand awareness for everybody. What we are most focused on is the live streaming of our business channels and Cheddar News in itself. So if you have Hulu or any cord-cutting service at this point, we're on all the major platforms, and you guys can view us. So please go, watch, and enjoy.
Watch, like, and subscribe. Hi, I'm Melanie Weiner. I'm the VP of Media Strategy and Client Success at Insider Inc., which is the parent company of Business Insider, Markets Insider, Insider, and lots of other sub-brands that I'm sure some of you know and love, such as Cheese Insider, Chocolate Insider, and lots of other cool ones. My role is sort of at the intersection of sales, marketing, and operations, but I specifically, day-to-day, I manage two teams. One is on the pre-sales side of the revenue-supported, advertising-supported business, so in charge of pricing, packaging, and working on all the RFPs that come in, and that's both for PG deals as well as direct. And the other team I manage is called Client Services, and they're sort of our account managers, so any IO that comes in through the door, they're sort of hand-holding the client and making sure that everything is a success and that we get renewals from them at the end of the day. And I also work on other monetization initiatives, so that's a little bit outside of my day-to-day realm, but anything revenue, call me.
Thank you. So what is data-driven publishing? That's a really good question, and I think maybe that's where we should start. So tell us, each of you tell us what data-driven publishing is to you and to your organization. What does it matter? What does it mean to your organization?
So I guess first and foremost for us, it's about getting high-quality data in an actionable form into the hands of decision makers, human decision makers inside the company. So that's like different functions and different lines of business that all need access to metrics on what's going on, events that are happening, both on platform and off platform, so that they can make decisions. So that could be content, it could be ad sales, it could be marketing, it could be product, and in fact it is all of those. And then I guess the second piece of data is the automation of decisioning in our systems that uses data. That still is primarily for us around advertising, but increasingly we're looking at other places where we can deploy automation sort of within the systems of Refinery. And then I guess like the last thing for us is about trying to bring different data sources together, and that's I think where you're able to pull them all into an environment, call it a warehouse or a lake, where you're then able to draw new insights that are generated from multiple data sources. That's kind of the holy grail, and that's when you feel like you're getting something special.
So data-driven publishing, what does it mean to me? I mean, my job's premise is data, so I wouldn't have work unless I had data to work with. To how I think about publishing and data is, I think it's not to rip off of what Nicholas said, but it's really making informed decisions on everything that you do within your ad density within the page, may it be revenue structuring, maybe rate cards, et cetera. Like everything should be backed by data and not based on a hit, like a hunch that you have. And a lot of that really does have to do with combining data and ensuring that you're kind of ahead of the things that will happen in the future of the business as opposed to being reactive. So I think proactivity and kind of forecasting and getting ahead of things that will occur is the direction that I'm kind of going towards with the being data-backed and looking into publishing. So I guess it would be proactive usage of the data would be kind of where I'm at right now.
I'll just give a big yes and to all of that, but I'll add to that I think for us, and maybe for me myself just in my career and what I've observed and other places I've worked is taking risks. Obviously in digital, we kind of don't know where the future is. Obviously we have signs that give us an inkling, but we don't really know where things are headed, so I think you have to take risks, and I think that's one thing that we do as a publisher, and I think so. Obviously, we use a bit of instinct, a bit of past experience, and a bit of data to inform the risks that we take, and then we use the data we gather from those risks to inform whether or not we keep going or we pivot to something else before it becomes, total in the red zone type of initiative. So I would say that's kind of how I would perceive data-driven publishing in terms of how we use it. Yeah.
So you all represent relatively young companies, but didn't start there clearly. But thinking about the organization that you work for now, data informs or really impacts two different sides of that business. There's the content side and the revenue side, right? So thinking about the content side for a minute, how has data changed the content journey, starting with Refinery 29? What do you see in the data that impacts how you shape the content for your audience?
So we have an insights and analytics team that does a lot of reporting on the insights that we're gathering and the numbers that we're seeing for content, and then it's really up to our amazing content strategists and editors to decide what kind of content they're going to make. But they're definitely informed. You see trends in terms of topics that people are responding to. We also look at what audiences are looking at our content. We're very committed to having a diverse audience, so we look at what information we have about, for example, we launched a channel called Unbothered that's for African American millennial women. We look to see what content is resonating with that audience because we want to develop it. We also look at sources of traffic so that when we're making content, we're thinking about where that audience will be. So obviously, as a publisher, you're trying to balance kind of organic traffic direct to .com with search traffic, with distribution on platforms and referrals from Facebook, et cetera. So that's kind of another piece of it. And then we also look at insights that we can gather from other people. So we have like a research and insights group that supports both sales and editorial that will look at what's kind of out there in the marketplace about trends among our audience, Gen Z and millennial women. And then I guess the last piece that we have is some proprietary research that we do. So we have a panel of Refinery 29 super fans that we go to, and we do both qualitative and quantitative surveys. And those, again, support both the sales side and the content side. So our content team has the ability to say, we're interested in intersectionality, and we want to find out what our audience thinks about it, and then we'll go out and work with them to develop sort of what we're looking for and go out and field the survey and come back with proprietary results.
So in terms of data-driven content, I'll be as honest as possible. In terms of what Cheddar does, since it's live streaming news, we're always kind of scrambling to make content, if that makes sense. So to make content based on the demands of revenue and data and what actually drives users, it's a bit tough right now because as young as we are, again, it's just live news. We need to get guests in and just, it's not, I wouldn't say just fill the time, but to be efficiently using that time as much as possible. I mean, in terms of like how we do think about it in terms of social and audience growth, I'm speaking in behalf of somebody that I work with, but a lot of times that the research that we do around that is, like the social videos that you see on LinkedIn, it really just depends on kind of, that one is a little less data-driven because it's more pump out the content and see what happens, if that makes sense. So it's post post-release data, if you want to say, but that's kind of where a lot of the strategy from the audience development really came from, because we saw that the text video really works with audiences, and that's where a lot of the bread and butter for the audience development occurs right now. But the short of it is not so much at the moment, but would love to do that in the future.
I definitely have some more to add to that, and I think, we use data to inform our content strategy in so many ways. I think I could probably spend an entire week talking about it, and I'm not even qualified to talk about it from all aspects, but that's how much I have to say. But a couple key things maybe I'll focus on. One example is, so Insider, the brand Insider, obviously that's our umbrella brand, but Insider itself started as just like an experiment on social. So we created a little channel on Facebook, and we decided to post sort of more lifestyle, adventure, food content and see what happens. And well, lo and behold, there was a huge audience there, so we ended up putting more and more resources behind that, and now that's sort of a huge brand for us, and it's something that we're putting a lot more resources into building out. So I think that's one thing we do a lot, is we sort of like test and experiment and then put more resources into those areas. Another thing too is we look at where our audience is and what they're reading, what they're consuming, how they're consuming, and that informs how we publish content, how we structure stories, where graphics appear on the page, how many lines in a paragraph, where you put in ads. So we're kind of iterating that all of the time, and I would say that our strategy is really iterative. We constantly will gather data and keep changing things so that our audience is happy and that we're monetizing our content well.
Do you still look at data on those social channels?
Oh, yes. Yes, we do.
Tell us what that looks like. What do you look at? What do you look for? And what causes you to make a change? What's compelling?
I think, obviously, views. If we have a lot of views in one particular content area, especially regarding video, we'll keep pooling resources there, like I said. So one experiment, I was kind of talking to Scotty about this before, was Cars Insider was kind of an experiment for us, and we've actually found a lot of success there on YouTube. We have this surprisingly large audience, and so that's one place that we're continuing to push resources into. And YouTube for us is a big distribution platform as well.
Can I add on to that? So we play on so many platforms because we're reaching a young audience, and they are looking for content on all these different platforms, and each platform has different metrics. And each platform changes their product because they're all, tech-driven companies and product-driven companies. So we actually have so many metrics that we have something that we call the Audience Bible to keep track of them. So for several hundred KPIs.
Can you share that?
Multiple platforms, but I can tell you how to do it. Yeah. We say these are the primary KPIs, these are secondary KPIs. Here's what our projections are, our goals. Here's what we track. Here's what they mean. Here's what sometimes we'd say, here's where we have demographic information, geographic information, and we try and use that as something that's a reference for marketers or salespeople. Now in practice, I'm not going to say that every salesperson always looks at the Audience Bible, but we can say, well, here it is, on page 22. So, and we update that quarterly. So that's it, but it really is a moving target. You can't go for a whole year with just one KPI set for one platform because they'll change it.
I was going to say also that things change so constantly, so we try to stay ahead of the algorithm as much as we can, but that's a game in a way for us too.
Yeah, it is something that they constantly, they want to control their platform, and so we have to kind of follow along. Chris, tell us with Cheddar, what are the metrics that you look at from social media, and do you see social media feeding the live stream, or what does that look like?
So I don't frequently get too into the social media portion of our business because it honestly doesn't drive revenue, right? Every social platform, they don't allow you to plug in your DFP tags or whatever it is to go monetize. But when we do look at it, I think the one thing that we always look for is to try to transition the users into making them live stream watchers, right? The one thing that's difficult with what we do right now is that our social platform is more known for the gadget videos and things of that nature, but we've just created a new portion of our website, which is less visited than others, but where it focuses specifically on gadget videos. It focuses on also almost how things are made and things of that nature. So a lot of what we look at in social is trying to see the number of users that we can transfer over to site visitors. And that frequently doesn't work so well because people kind of, the visiting patterns between the different platforms is completely different, right? When you're on YouTube, you're kind of just there to consume things, and it's a playlist style video. And when you go on site, it's a little bit different where people are more focused to kind of just be on cheddar.com only, as opposed to having multiple publishers there. So that's generally what we look at, but I'm kind of speaking on behalf of somebody else, but that's the extent of what we do look at data, and I'm sorry if my counterpart doesn't agree with me, but that's to the extent of what I understand that we look at social.
Gotcha.
I can say from like a plumbing standpoint, when you try and build the system yourself in order to pull in all the social data, you find that like these APIs are actually quite complex, that they don't always line up. One person's definition of a day is a little different than someone else's, so you do typically need like a vendor to help you. I think it's like very wise to get somebody to help you with like pre-built connectors that already know about the Instagram or the Facebook APIs, and that if there are changes, then they're going to support the changes.
Yeah, I find that tracking social media data is, can be quite the black hole of time. So let's talk about data and how it has impacted revenue. So 3 relatively young companies. Give us some insight as to the data path or the data journey that has been impactful and maybe even a surprise, something maybe that's been a little surprising.
Want to start? Since you're on the revenue side.
Me, yeah. Well, one big initiative for us this year was we onboarded a brand new DMP, so that meant moving all of our data segments from one place to another and making them more and more robust. And then, obviously, from an RFP response standpoint, building data segments that are going to answer what our clients are looking for and provide them with audiences that they're seeking, and come up with really cool, I guess, audiences that we can sell them as well proactively. So I think that's something we've been focusing a lot on, and I think, now that I feel like we're pretty settled in our new DMP, we're trying to kind of build out more from there. And the fact that we keep talking about the term cookieless, that everything is going cookieless, we're really trying to make sure that we're ahead of the curve on that, and that we're setting ourselves up for success in the future, if that eventually is a thing, which it seems like it will be. So that's one way we're doing that. So I think we're selling a lot of data in that regard. And yeah, that's one thing I got now.
I think in terms of using data in that respect, like a lot of what I have to do at the company is really just focus on how programmatic impacts revenue overall. The thing that everyone kind of believes is that you plug in more partners, and you increase revenue. But the thing that is it's old news now, but that I actually had firsthand experience pretty heavily on this portion of my career is seeing is that the more partners you do include, depending on the plug, and even from like a server-to-server perspective, can actually definitely slow things down. So you'd expect that from a server-to-server connection that things don't slow down. But you will actually see response times go down if you don't actually feather it properly. So you do have to be super mindful about where you're plugging in people, how they're being plugged in, and their response times to the page, because your ad load can go from a second to like 6 in a heartbeat. And then peeling that back is actually a much more painful exercise than anybody would think, because once your senior management is privy to the information on how much revenue potential there is in the market, it's hard kind of peeling that back in the sense of keeping the user experience integrity in place. So that's something that I found was a bit intriguing because everyone thinks that server-side connections is like the future and it's so fast and things of that nature. But once they stop responding because things are timing out on their end, it turns into a bit of, it's almost like a completely blinded experience where you just have to test things in and out. So that A/B test has been mind-blowing in a bit because it's really hard to get to the data that's actually the things that are occurring behind that data. So that's been a bit painful, to be honest, but new learning experience for sure.
Treat all third-party APIs with skepticism until they prove themselves. And yeah, I think for all bid managers, whether they're header or server, you want to be impatient. let's say. Don't wait around for too long before you move on to the next. For us, I'll tell a story. Like sometimes I think for Refinery, because we have like a really strong, storytelling component and branding component, we're very premium. So we do a lot of direct sold. So a lot of our historic ad sales revenue wasn't necessarily data dependent, but the world is changing around us. And so even when we're not doing programmatic, that's now affecting like how we offer solutions to clients. So I'll tell a little story that happened this year. We had a client that was doing just 100% share of voice sponsorship on a content section of the site. And performance was great, they were getting lots of traffic, but then they came to us and said, actually what we want to do is we have this one psychographic segment that we wanted to be targeting, and we want to target them on this site, and we also want to know who else is using the site. And you need to change kind of like how you're delivering this midstream, because that's what we're looking for. We said, okay, we can help you. So we used our DMP, and we actually built a psychographic lookalike model of our own to match the segment that they were looking for. Then we targeted creative based on that, and that was like almost like a mini waterfall for them, so that they could track like people that matched on their segment, and then we also served different creative to everyone that wasn't already in the segment. So it's almost like running both like retargeting and prospecting within the same kind of a universe. And then on post, we used Quantcast, which is a product that we added this year, to like report on the psychographic characteristics of all the people that were coming to the section. So we were using basically different kinds of data sources, not all totally linked. We weren't actually taking their first-party data and putting it in, but we're trying to like align the profile of the customer, the consumer groups that we were looking for in all these different systems, so that we could have consistent reporting and show the value that we were already delivering. So we didn't actually change like the section or the content or anything, but we like adjusted the way that we were delivering ads and some of the data that we were reporting back, and I think like discovered and proved a lot more value.
And so what was the outcome?
Happy client.
Did they change what their approach is with Refinery 29? Did they build out an ask for different sections or different?
In that case, it was just really like modifying midstream what we were delivering to show the value that was already there, but obviously it helped the relationship. I would say in general, though, like this is a world that all of us as publishers that are kind of, this also thematic to what was discussed before, living in a world where Google and Facebook have more data, right? I can tell you we're not going to have the same level of first-party data as Facebook, but we want to take everything that we can do to show the value that we can deliver in terms of deeper insight and awareness about our audience, and then combine that with our real strong suit that we're the best in the world at, which is telling a story that motivates this audience and that this audience believes in. So I think like the data-driven publisher is really about that, trying to make that marriage happen, so that and then from just a marketer perspective, you can think of it as, I want to have the through line that connects my top of the funnel, stuff into the mid funnel stuff, and then ultimately into the performance stuff.
So clearly there was an initial premise that then transitioned based on this ask of this client. So Chris, tell us with Cheddar, how have things changed in terms of revenue goals or the revenue journey since the early days, which weren't that long ago, and how has data impacted that? So what have you learned in your data journey that's changed whether it's actually how you're earning income now or what the goals are for the future?
Sure. So I mean, I want to walk back a little bit and just kind of rephrase what I said before. I don't think that server-side connections and all that was really the issue. What I was kind of trying to speak about before is impacting revenue with putting more and more tech on without really looking backwards. Because what I did was, and I'll be very honest about it, I've put in a lot of tech into the pages that we have, and without looking back really, and then now that things are slow, it's a painful exercise to move forward. Regarding what you're saying, I think our revenue strategy really has been more on the branded side of things. So if you look at Cheddar, and you'll see that within our segments, they'll have like a little, the area within the ticker itself or the banner on the bottom, you'll see there's E-Trade or somebody, and they'll speak for about a few minutes regarding a certain topic. So that's the real bread and butter of what Cheddar does. In terms of my purview directly with programmatic and things of that nature, our next steps on overall monetization has definitely changed once I joined the organization, because we've now realized that we can monetize on our slots and spots, and we are focused on doing that mainly because branded, you can only push it to a certain degree because there's content creation and things of that nature. What we really focus on right now, at least in terms of what I'm doing, is really moving the revenue in terms of how to get as much revenue as possible out of the page, meaning can we increase ad density? Can we, it's a bad word to say, but do we play around with refreshes and things of that nature? And the different tech vendors, do we have them not throw in a slider? Do we remove outstream, et cetera? So, I mean, a lot of what the team is focused on right now is really pushing revenue in terms of that, but doing it efficiently. So, I mean, the focus has really changed so that we do sell into those areas of our business. But now that we also have an A4 arm of our company, which is more the buy-side entities that we have, we also look to see, from a margin perspective, does it make sense to run an O&O? Does it make sense to push it off onto the DSPs that we kind of built out? So we're starting to look really into that portion of the business, where is it scale that we need? Is it margin that we need? Like, how do we really fish around that? Because our IOs are becoming really painful to deal with, because it's a challenge more than anything, because we have so many arms to the business now. So I think the true data portion of what we're doing is how to squeeze margin out efficiently, and which avenue do we really take when we respond to plans and things of that nature.
Let me say on just this point about like measuring the impact of different monetization tech on the page, that it does take a certain level of sophistication of the product and engineering organization to have a true A/B test environment, so that you can add, for example, like a new demand partner, a new revenue monetization opportunity, and really isolate that and see it, and not everyone has it. I'm sure Business Insider does.
Well, I would say I have more of like an indirect answer to your question. I would say we're betting big on data. We invested a lot this year in onboarding a new DMP, and I can say that it's Permutive, and I know they're in the room here today. And so that's, yeah, hey. That's everything from, like I said before, building robust segments, building lookalike modeling, but all the way to post-sales and how we use the analytics from Permutive to inform really awesome wrap reports that we share with our clients. And then one thing that is a focus of my role as well is tying together pre-sales and post-sales, because they were traditionally kind of siloed in a way. Just because something performed really well or maybe didn't perform well, those insights weren't always being shared with the pre-sales planning teams. They were at times, but it took someone being like, hey, can you tell me what ended up happening last time with client X? Yeah. So that's more of my job now, is to sort of tie those together. So I think for us, like, that's really valuable data, because obviously if we know something really did well in the past or didn't, either we don't offer it again or we, go big on that on our proposals.
So you bring up a really good topic, and one that's on my list of questions, and that is sharing the data that you have throughout the organization. Getting more people more aware of the data that you have, the stories that are there to be told, and giving them stuff they can work with, and then also getting their insights into maybe the data that you should be looking for. So you talked a little bit about earlier when we were chatting about how that happens at Insider. Tell us about that.
I think it's sort of something we're trying to put more resources into now. Currently, there are lots of different teams that own different pieces of data, I would say, as relates to the company overall. So editorial team that sort of is a data aggregator and looks at data in one way. And then we have someone in the revenue group who is our revenue analytics director, and he's looking at revenue-related data and sharing that back with the sales organization. What clients are advertising with us, who isn't advertising with us, which categories are big for us, which ones do we want to go after, and I think. And many other data sources, obviously, but I think marrying those together, I think, would make us a much smarter organization. So I think that's something we're really working on doing. And our director of revenue analytics, who is not here, I'll speak for him only slightly, not really. You'll have to ask him yourself. But he's working on sort of marrying a lot of data points together, and he's built some awesome tools and dashboards that are being shared across the company so that everyone at least has access to data, what they do with the data. No one's really saying, do this with all the data. It's just, here's some awesome data and use it to your discretion and tell us what other data points you want. So I think we're sort of still in discovery mode and still trying to get ourselves really organized, but we're getting there and we're definitely making progress since I joined the company about 3 years ago. So
What
huge.
tools do you use to share data inside the company?
Yeah, well, I think we talked about this on the phone a bit, that I think for a while we were very spreadsheet heavy, then we moved from spreadsheets to Google Sheets. We experimented with some vendors along the way, but some of them didn't really pan out for us, and I don't know if it was partially due to setup. We could have done a better job maybe setting them up and ingesting various APIs. But now we're using Google Data Studio to help us with some of that ingestion. And I think hopefully we're looking at some other tools to help us with that in the future. But for now, this is sort of our hacked together solution for sharing data across the company.
Well, with Google,
Yeah.
it's like it's such a brilliant tool, and it seems so simple, doesn't it? But
Yeah.
So, Chris, tell us about how Cheddar gets data throughout the organization, what that looks like, how you get numbers in front of people, how you get people to come up with data questions, and then also the tools that you use.
Sure. So, admittedly, we are still very spreadsheet and Google Sheets heavy. We don't have at least a tool right now that aggregates all that. So, I am the one-man team that aggregates all that and throws out reports through either email, spreadsheets, etc. How does that generally disseminate? I mean, the one thing that I always try to be mindful of when sharing data, at least, is, like you said, kind of platform. Do we create it as a sheet where all the sheets are available to everybody? Do we give a certain lens to it? Do we do it as a spreadsheet, as a chart? Do you use a graphical representation, etc.? I mean, it really does really depend on the audience that you're looking at. So I'll be very transparent and say that, with my executives, I don't want to show all the data that's there because they don't have nearly enough time to read it, right? So you have to think about effectiveness of data and how you share it. So I'm sure everybody knows this, but with execs, generally anything that's more of a graphical representation is more impactful and shows kind of what you're going after more efficiently. Should you share with an analyst? Should it be more spreadsheet form? But the short of it really is we are very spreadsheet heavy right now, and I basically ingest all the data into those spreadsheets. How we transform it and share it is really through emails and Google Sheets at the moment.
Yeah, Excel is kind of like the platform of last resort for most organizations, and I would say we haven't completely eliminated it, but we have a platform called Domo that we use, which is like kind of an all-in-one data warehouse, query layer, and visualization dashboard layer. And so we have a lot of our data sources now in Domo, and we use that in lots of different places in the company. I will say that this question of like wrap reports and like making sure that we're cycling back all that insights to our team in addition to sharing them with clients is also, I'm like samesies on that one.
Samesies.
One thing with Domo and sort of on this theme of like data versus insights, just as like in product and engineering, I always believe that there are never enough engineers for all the requests that people have. So in like a big business, I think there's never enough analysts for all the insights that people want, so you have to like prioritize. However, I don't really believe in unlimited self-serve when it comes to dashboarding and data, because we've had the experience at Refinery when we first brought in Domo, we're like, anyone in this company can make any card they want with any data source, like just put it together, match it up for yourself, and it created a little bit of a mess. So I think you need to like roll out, democratize access to dashboards, but with thought about like what does this team really want, and then you always have to have some analysts that can have like the real unfettered access to everything, including the raw data, and those tool sets can be a little different.
So one last question, and this was, I think, when we talked last week, the hot topic, A/B testing. These guys got so excited about A/B testing. So talk a little bit about your approach, and maybe give us an example of something that you learned through A/B testing that changed the trajectory or the journey of the organization.
I mean, we have, so I was saying I think Business Insider probably has good A/B testing set up because some of your engineers I used to work with, and I know they're very good at setting that up. But we had, at Time Inc., we wouldn't launch any new product, for example, where I was before, where Chris was. We wouldn't launch any new front-end product without measuring viewable impressions per session, for example, in addition to like SEO and page performance. So that's something that now we're doing at Refinery. Also, like we're about to roll out a new mobile version of our homepage, and so we've like set a KPI, measured that KPI, done through A/B testing. It's a pain in the neck because when you commit to doing that, now you actually have to live or die by the data, and then you have to make sure that your test environments are clean, that you're really isolating the impact, that there aren't other things that are clouding it, that you're testing one thing at a time. But once you get up to that level where you're able to sort of always be running experiments, at least on the front end with product, then you can essentially think of like everything that you do as an experiment. You're always having hypotheses, you're always testing them, and you're always improving. But it takes a big investment.
Was there anything at Refinery that was a fundamental change that came out of A/B testing?
There's a lot. I mean, we're about to relaunch the homepage based on a lot of insights from A/B testing, so I would say that's pretty big.
Can't wait to see it.
A mobile homepage.
So in terms of A/B testing, when you think programmatic, generally people either A/B test or they don't, right? There's no in between. So how we kind of measure that is we have randomized key values kind of fire out of the page, and we can ingest those and look at, is a certain setup more profitable, is it not, does it slow the page down, does it not? The tough part about A/B testing that we always try to overcome is marrying both revenue data and page analytics together, because that's super tough exercise because there's not a lot of platforms that can do that. Yeah. But you kind of take a best guess approach at that portion because it's hard to get that data to feed into analytics without having some type of fuzzy data in there. But in terms of A/B testing, like a lot of the decisions that we make to add partners and to test is based really upon those randomized key values. In terms of page analytics and kind of what we've done on the product side, we have a site that a lot of people don't know that we own, which is Rate My Professors. Actually, the main reason why I'm at Cheddar. The one test that we did is there's a feature that we're rolling out that's called Related Professors. And we did an A/B test against that where we actually were able to marry all the data together because we had all the analytics and DFP data kind of flowing into the Google Analytics tool. And we did see that, I think it was like page views per session data on users that were exposed to it went from somewhere in the ballpark of like 3.5 to 10. And in tandem with that, you also question, are they going too far on the page, and is the page is monetization getting lower along the path? And it was actually the opposite of that, where there's more impressions, a lot more revenue, a lot more page views, people were going deeper in. So provided that data, that feature is being rolled out we also have a site redesign for that's coming out soon. And that feature, I think, will be rolled out fully with that. And then that's really kind of groundbreaking for what we saw because, I mean, you're almost tripling the session depth per people that actually use that feature. So that was kind of what we learned from doing A/B testing recently.
I would say from our perspective, I'm definitely not qualified to get real in the weeds on anything tech or product related, but I will say that within the past 6 months, we did roll out a brand new homepage, and I know that that was a very iterative process. A lot of A/B testing was behind that. But one thing I can speak to from the revenue side of the organization, how we do a lot of A/B testing is just one example is with our custom content and how we're sort of surfacing content throughout our site. And we do a lot of headline testing, image testing to see what performs well. And hopefully that will end up driving more engagements on site. And so that's one way in which we do that.
The sort of next level after testing, A/B testing of a different user experience or a different ad load at a moment in time is to then do cohort testing where you measure it on a group of people over time. So there can be also some things that especially if you add more things to the page, let's say, then you may not see it right away, but over time you may see that engagement metrics will drop off, so you want to be careful also sometimes about looking over like a 30-day period and maybe isolating a group of people to make sure that their experience, that you see what the impact on their overall engagement is.
Thank you. Do we have time for one more question?
I
we
would
wanna-
like to open, actually,
Okay.
I would like to open it up.
Sure.
We must have answered everything.
Not quite. Chris, could you tell us a little bit, your Cheddar is going heavy on OTT. Can you tell us a little bit about what sort of metrics you're able to get back from the platforms and how it compares to some of the others that you're on?
Sure. So we're a rebroadcaster generally, right? Because we're on your Hulu's, your Samsung TV Plus, all those types of different platforms. The amount of data that they provide you back is super disparate. Sometimes they'll give you hours viewed or unique visitors or kind of a flavor of all of that, but they're actually not unified across platforms. So it's super tough to kind of understand all of that. I mean, I guess in terms of the revenue generation portion, what I generally look at is render rates is super important to look at because although one partner is giving you a lot of revenue, if their overall render rates are super low, that's like a big no-no, right? Because per DSP, per whatever user, that all changes. But then if you get good revenue and it's a winning bid, you kind of have to offset all that. So we use different types of multipliers to consider this. We have a server-to-server partner that we use, Publica, and they kind of help us with all the analysis in between. But in terms of the broadcasting info, it's really tough to tell left from right because you literally get 5 different metrics from each person, and it never lines up to one unified metric. So that one, honestly, we've kind of given up on because to say we have X amount of users per platform is super tough. And even to get an in-between layer to kind of understand that is really hard at the moment. But in terms of revenue, the general calculation is really just render rates, fill, and just looking at overall what actually impresses on page. And that's kind of how we look at the revenue picture for OTT right now.
Nicholas, you mentioned you've got a user panel that you use. Can you tell us a little bit about how that's structured? Who owns that? How many it is, how you use them, and then how you disseminate the information from that group?
Yeah, sure. So we work with a vendor called Vision Critical. Our group of R29ers called Mad Chatter, and they are signed up to partly because they just want to give their opinion and they like to participate in it. But we also do sweepstakes, and sometimes we'll have them come into the office for events if they're in New York, things like that. So it's like a way for super users to feel closer to the brand. And this is something that we can do custom research for advertising partners. We do custom research internally. We do thought leadership studies that come out of this. We've even used it for things like consumer products. We just had a line of plus size clothing where we put some designs in front of our Mad Chatter group and asked for their feedback. So we're trying to use it in product development, not just for online product, but for other kinds of product. We have an events business called 29 Rooms that probably a lot of people have heard of, and that we're also doing research with the Mad Chatters to get their opinion on different kinds of experiential things. So it's been a great resource for us.
And I have to ask, because it's news, you guys just got acquired today. Do you know already how that works in terms of having a fairly well-evolved data infrastructure merging with another major brand?
So yeah, we announced that we've agreed to merge with Vice Media. Obviously, I don't have a lot to say besides what is in the newspaper, but it's super exciting. I would say that Vice also is a sophisticated technology company. We both target a youth audience. We both have multiple lines of business. So
do you have a similar data? I mean, in terms of data and the ways in which you've structured data internally, is it two different cultures and two different infrastructures that you're going to have to merge to?
I think that the two companies are actually pretty well aligned already, but obviously anytime you bring together multiple organizations and multiple brands, Chris and I used to work on a family of 25 brands together at Time Inc., so there's going to be some integration work to be done, but we're super excited about it.
We're going to move this to a round table in a second, but Scotty, panel, thank you so much. That was really interesting. We are, John,